Okay, so one application problem that we can do with our linear equations and linear systems is the cost, revenue, and profit ideas. So if you have X denoting the number of units of a product manufactured or sold, we can create a cost function, C of X, a revenue function, R of X, and a profit function, P of X. So one thing that we have to be careful about is that revenue and profit are not the same thing. Revenue is the money that you bring in from selling your product, but profit, to calculate profit, you have to take that revenue and subtract out the costs. Whenever you're making your cost equation, it's important that you also realize that there are two different kinds of costs. There are fixed costs and variable costs. So examples of fixed costs, costs that remain more or less constant regardless of the manufacturing activity. That could be something like your building rent, the utilities, things like that, because you have to pay a certain amount, perhaps every month or every year, for just having the building and just having the machine and just having the lights turned on, regardless of other activities. Then you have what's called the variable costs. That's what varies with your production and your sales. So that, a lot of times, is the hourly wages, maybe, for your employees. Those could vary depending on how much you make. If you're making more, then you need more personnel, and therefore your wages are going to depend on that. The cost of your materials. If you are manufacturing something and the cost of the materials to make that product increases, then your costs are automatically going to increase as well. What we get here then is that the fixed costs, a lot of times those go with that B value in your equation, and the variable values go with your M value. Those end up being your slope. So let's do an example. It says an electronics company manufactures pocket calculators at a cost of $9 each, and the company's fixed costs amount to $400 per day. They then sell the calculators for $17 each. We want to find the cost, revenue, and profit functions in that order. Okay, so for costs, it looks like the calculators cost $9 each. And then here it even says fixed costs of $400 per day. So we don't know what that $400 per day is exactly, but again, it probably has something to do with just having the building and, running the electricity to manufacture anything at all. So those are our two different kinds of costs. So it looks like we've got the cost function of, it costs $9 each to make a calculator. So that is the slope, $9 per calculator, with this flat $400 that doesn't rely on the amount of calculators, just a constant cost. As far as revenue is concerned, they sell their calculators for $17 each. So that's going to be the only value in my revenue. Sell them for $17 per calculator. Now, to go and find that profit function, we have to remember that profit is calculated by doing the revenue minus the cost. So for revenue, we have 17x. And right here, you have to be very, very careful. Put your cost function in parentheses when you go to do this subtraction. So minus the entire 9x plus 400 statement there. Because what you have to end up doing is you have to end up subtracting everything that's in there. So you have to distribute. So that turns into a minus 9x and a minus 400. And then if I put all of that together, then my equation simplified is 8x minus 400. If there's going to be a mistake, I almost always find it right there with that symbol. And it's usually because of missing parentheses and not distributing. Okay, so once you've been very careful with your parentheses and you've got the profit equation written, Then you can compute profit and loss if you need to. So this says compute the profit or loss corresponding to daily production levels of 35 and 70 calculators. Okay, so we want to do a P of 35, and we also want to do a P of 70. See what our profit would be in both of these cases. So for 35, it would be 8 times 35 minus 400. And that gives me 280 minus 400, which is negative 120. So that's a loss of $120. And P of 70 would be 8 times 70 minus 400. That's 560 minus 400. So 160. So that's a profit of $160. So certainly would not be a good idea to make and sell 35 calculators per day, but 70 would be a good choice. We would be making some profit there.